Good evening. I'm Haley Ficasello, and this is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report, where we bring you fact-based look at major federal prosecutions unfolding across the United States. Tonight's report focuses on the Northeast region, where federal prosecutors have announced a wide range of cases involving bank fraud, international narcotic trafficking, election fraud, firearm violation, corruption, and child exploitation offenses. Federal investigators say these cases demonstrate how organized criminal networks, from international drug cartels to online fraud rings, continue to target Americans' communities. We begin tonight in Maine. A Bangor woman has pled guilty to participating in a multi-state bank fraud scheme that involved impersonating legitimate account holders to steal money directly from bank accounts. According to federal prosecutors, 46-year-old Nicole Kelly admitted she conspired with others between July and October 2024 to obtain funds by entering banks and posing as customers. Investigators say Kelly used fraudulent identification cards containing the names of real bank customers but displaying her photograph. During a search of a co-conspirator's home, authorities recovered two fake driver's licenses bearing Kelly's image but different identities. Court records show Kelly and her accomplice traveled to banks outside of Maine to carry out fraud. Kelly now faces up to 30 years in federal prison, along with a fine for up to $1 million and possible supervised release. She will be sentenced after a pre-sentence investigation by the U.S. Probation's Office. In a separate federal case, an Auburn business owner has pled guilty to filing false tax returns and providing fraudulent documents to the IRS during audit. Federal prosecutors say 30-year-old Rakia Mohammed, owner of Reliable Language Resources, falsely reported business expenses on federal tax filing. Court documents state that Mohammed claimed fraudulent contract labor and office expenses on her 2018 and 2019 tax returns. When the Internal Revenue Service later audited the filing, Mohammed allegedly submitted falsified business records to support those expenses. Mohammed faces up to 3 years in federal prison, fines up to $250,000, and a term of supervised release. Sentencing will take place following the completion of a pre-sentence investigation report. In Vermont, a Massachusetts man has been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for operating a drug trafficking network that moved cocaine base and fentanyl into central Vermont. Federal officials say 25-year-old Justin Lano of Springfield, Massachusetts, coordinated a multi-year conspiracy involving family members and associates. Between 2021 and 2024, the group trafficked narcotics from Massachusetts into Vermont, supplying customers in Washington, Orange, and Lammo counties. Investigators conducted controlled drug purchases, including one in April of 2022, in which Alano allegedly conducted a sales while wearing a body armor and carrying a handgun. After being indicted in 2022, Alano failed to report to pretrial services and became a fugitive. Prosecutors say he continued running the drug network while on the run, directing carriers who made approximately 100 trips transporting drugs between Massachusetts and Vermont. He was sentenced to 120 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Federal investigators say Lano also managed multi-drug runners who distributed narcotics across Vermont using encrypted messaging apps to coordinate sales. In one incident during September of 2024, a runner reported missing drug proceeds. Authorities say an armed associate linked to the organization threatened residents at gunpoint while demanding the missing money. A later search by the ATF and DEA agents recovered cocaine, cocaine base, and fentanyl at the location. Federal prosecutors say that the case highlights how regional drug networks are increasingly connected across multiple states. A member of a Dominican Republic-linked drug trafficking organization has pled guilty to distributing fentanyl and methamphetamine across New Hampshire's Seacoast region. Federal prosecutors say Juan Carlos de los Santos Romano, also part of Methum, Massachusetts-based drug trafficking organization responsible for a large narcotic distribution operation. Between late 2023, and early 2024, investigators conducted 10 controlled drug purchases involving fentanyl and methamphetamine. Authorities say 4 additional members of the network have already pled guilty. Romano now faces federal sentencing scheduled for June 10th of 2026. In another case, 48-year-old Flemen Sotos Baz of Boston has been sentenced to more than a year in federal prison for his role in a large-scale fentanyl and cocaine trafficking operation. Prosecutors say the organization operated like a business, using dispatch phone lines where customers called and ordered narcotics. Soto Baz allegedly coordinated the sales and dispatched runners to conduct the drug transaction throughout Manchester, New Hampshire. When authorities arrested him in June of 2023, investigators seized more than 1 kilogram of cocaine from an apartment connected to the operation. A federal judge sentenced Soto's Bays to 50 months in prison. In Massachusetts, federal prosecutors say a New York woman has been indicted for allegedly smuggling 8 kilograms of cocaine into the United States through the Boston Logan International Airport. Authorities say 24-year-old Stacy Mita Guzman arrived on JetBlue flight from Punta Cana into the Dominican Republic in February. During an inspection by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, a narcotics detection dog alerted agents to Guzman's duty-free bag. Inside were 2 boxes labeled as Chivas Regal whiskey. Investigators say the box had been resealed with glue and contained 12 bricks of cocaine weighed approximately 8 kilograms. If convicted, Guzman faces a minimum of 10 years in federal prison and potential life imprisonment. A Brockton man associated with the Harvard Street Gang has been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for selling fentanyl while already under court supervision for previous drug offenses. Federal investigators say 29-year-old Joshua Tavares conducted 6 controlled drug sales between September and November of 2024. Authorities say the transaction involved approximately 549 grams of fentanyl. When investigators executed search warrants in December of 2024, they recovered 4 kilograms of suspected fentanyl, large amounts of cash, and a firearm, including a Glock pistol modified with a machine gun conversion device. Tavares was sentenced to 12 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. In Rhode Island, a Providence man has been charged with resisting federal officers and damaging government property following a vehicle pursuit involving immigration agents. Federal authorities say 39-year-old Alfredo Nufio Marquine fled when agents attempted to conduct a traffic stop in January. During the pursuit, investigators say Marquine placed his vehicle in reverse and struck a law enforcement vehicle, causing damage. Authorities also allege he turned the vehicle towards the officer before fleeing again. Marquine now faces federal charges for impeding federal officers and destruction of government property. In Connecticut, a California man has been sentenced to more than 6 years in prison for trafficking narcotics into Connecticut through a multi-state drug network. Federal prosecutors say Jonathan Garcia, also known as Gordo, coordinated shipments of fentanyl and cocaine from Mexico through California to Connecticut. Investigators linked the operation to the Loose Kanzan Motorcycle Club, which distributed drugs throughout the Hartford area. Garcia was sentenced to 78 months in federal prison, followed by 4 years of supervised release. In a separate investigation, a Torreton man has been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for his role in a cocaine trafficking ring that used UPS Postal Service to transport narcotics. Authorities say Brian Martinez Rivera helped retrieve packages, kilogram quantities of cocaine shipped from Puerto Rico to Connecticut drop addresses. Investigators intercepted 10 parcels containing roughly 2 kilograms of cocaine each and identified hundreds of additional suspicious shipments. Rivera received 60 months in federal prison. In New York, federal prosecutors say a Ghanaian national has pled guilty in New York for his role in a massive international romance scam that stole more than 100 million from victims. Authorities say 40-year-old Derek von Yabush used fake online identities to deceive victims into sending money. Many victims were elderly individuals who believed that they were in a romantic relationship online. Yoba admitted responsibility for more than 10 million in stolen funds. He now faces up to 20 years in federal prison and has agreed to pay over 10 million in restitution and forfeiture. In northern New York, 45-year-old Gregor Magan of Glensville has pled guilty to distributing and possessing child pornography. Federal prosecutors say Magan used an online messaging platform in July of 2024 to encourage the production of sexual abuse videos involving a 14-year-old victim. Investigators say Magan also distributed at least 14 child exploitation videos to other users. Federal officials say cases involving online child exploitation remains a top investigation priority nationwide. In New Jersey, a former Passaic County correctional officer has been sentenced to 17 months in federal prison for violating the civil rights of a pretrial detainee. Federal prosecutors say Jose Gonzalez assaulted a handcuffed inmate inside a camera blind spot at the Passaic County Jail in 2021. Authorities say Gonzalez and other officers knocked the detainee to the ground and struck him multiple times. Investigators say the officer later conspired to obstruct justice by falsely claiming that the assault never occurred. In another case, a Newark man has been convicted in federal court of drug trafficking and illegal firearm possession following a 3-day jury trial. Authorities say 38-year-old Makindine Cheeseborough was caught selling fentanyl and cocaine during a police investigation. Officers later recovered .38 caliber handgun and ammunition from a vehicle connected to him. Because Cheeseborough is previously convicted felon, he was prohibited from possessing a firearm. He now faces up to 20 years in federal prison. In Delaware, a Lewis man has pled guilty to fentanyl distribution charges after fleeing from the police during a traffic stop. Authorities say 38-year-old Brandon Barnes attempted to escape officers in July of 2024 before crashing his vehicle. Investigators recovered more than 500 counterfeit fentanyl pills marked as M30s. Barnes faces up to 20 years in federal prison with a sentencing scheduled for July 15th of 2026. In Wilmington, a 24-year-old Mufasta Darren Westcott has pled guilty to illegally possessing a firearm. Police say Westcott fled officers on foot before throwing away a loaded Ruger 9mm handgun. Because of multiple prior felony convictions, he was prohibited from possessing a firearm. He now faces up to 15 years in federal prison. Federal prosecutors in Philadelphia say a 50-year-old man has been charged with illegally voting in 2024 federal elections despite being ordered deported decades earlier. Authorities say Mahidi Sacco, an illegal alien ordered removed in 2000, allegedly falsified claim to be a U.S. citizen to register and vote. If convicted, Sacco faces up to 5 years in federal prison. In another election case, 32-year-old Matthew Lays of Bethlehem has been convicted of voting in 2 states during 2020 presidential election. Prosecutors say Lays voted by mail in Pennsylvania and then voted in person in Florida. Federal officials say the conviction reinforces the importance of protecting the integrity of U.S. elections. Lays faces up to 5 years in prison for each charge when he is sentenced later this year. Federal prosecutors say these cases represent only a small portion of the investigations currently underway across the United States. From international fraud schemes and narcotic trafficking operations to public corruption and election integrity cases, federal authorities say they will continue working with local and state law enforcement agencies to dismantle criminal networks. For continued coverage of federal prosecution and investigation reporting across the country, stay with Englebrook Independent News. I'm Haley Ficasello. Thank you for watching the Federal Crime Report. Good night.